I thought my stepmom, Victoria, finally accepted me as part of the family when she asked me to contribute $800 for her birthday trip to Lake Tahoe. What I didn't know was that while everyone else would be enjoying the cabin, skiing, and celebrating, I was expected to stay behind and babysit her three young kids for an entire week, unpaid. When I found out about this setup at what I thought was just a casual family dinner, I was shocked. But what happened next changed everything. Instead of being their free childcare, I booked myself a trip to New York City and turned off my phone. The meltdown that followed when they realized I wasn't home to watch the kids? Well, let's just say Victoria showed her true colors. And my dad? His reaction was something I never saw coming. This is the story of how I finally stood up for myself and why I don't regret it for a second. My name is Maya, and at 24, I've been navigating the complicated world of blended families for the past 3 years. My dad, David, married Victoria when I was 21, right after I graduated college. She came with three young kids from her previous marriage, twin boys Ethan and Noah, who are now 6, and little Lily, who just turned 4. Don't get me wrong, the kids are sweet, but the family dynamics? That's been a whole different story. When Dad first introduced me to Victoria, I was honestly relieved. After Mom passed away when I was 16, it had been just me and Dad for years. I wanted him to be happy again, to have someone to share his life with. Victoria seemed nice enough. She was a part-time real estate agent, bubbly and social, everything Dad needed after years of being pretty isolated. The kids were adorable too, and I figured becoming a big sister might be fun. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. It started small. Victoria asking if I could watch the kids while she and Dad went to dinner. Just for a few hours, she'd say, "You're so good with them." Then it became watching them during her real estate showings on weekends. Then overnight babysitting when they wanted romantic getaways. Before I knew it, I was the go-to babysitter for every occasion, every emergency, every time Victoria needed a break. After college, I landed a job as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup here in Phoenix. It's demanding work, long hours, tight deadlines, lots of creative projects. But I love it. I'm good at it too, and I've been building something for myself. I moved into my own apartment about 8 months ago, finally getting some independence while still staying close enough to help Dad and be part of the family. The thing is, I genuinely care about Ethan, Noah, and Lily. They've never known me as anything other than their big sister Maya, and I've watched them grow from toddlers into these funny, curious little people. Ethan is obsessed with dinosaurs and can name every species you've never heard of. Noah is the quiet artist who draws these amazing pictures that I hang on my fridge. And Lily? She's got Dad wrapped around her finger just like I used to when I was her age. But Victoria, our relationship has always been complicated. She's never been mean to me exactly. She's always polite, always includes me in family photos, always introduces me as David's daughter. But there's this underlying current I could never quite put my finger on. Like I'm useful to have around, but not quite part of the inner circle. Not quite family in the way that matters. It became more obvious as the kids got older and more demanding. Victoria would get overwhelmed easily. 3 young kids will do that to anyone. But instead of hiring actual childcare or asking her sister Melissa for help, she'd call me. "Maya, could you possibly watch them Saturday afternoon? I know you're busy with work, but I have this important client meeting. Maya, I hate to ask, but could you take the kids overnight? David and I desperately need some alone time." I always said yes. Always. Even when it meant missing plans with friends, even when I was exhausted from a 60-hour work week, even when I had my own things I wanted to do. Because that's what family does, right? You help each other out. The pattern became so established that Victoria stopped asking and started assuming. She'd text me on Thursday about watching the kids Saturday, not checking if I had plans. She'd mention in passing that she'd booked a spa day, and I'd be watching everyone Sunday morning. It was like I'd become the unpaid nanny in the family, expected to be available whenever needed. My friend Jess kept telling me I was being taken advantage of. Maya, you're 24, she'd say during our coffee dates. When was the last time you went on a date? When was the last time you had a completely free weekend? But I'd brush off her concerns. This was family. This was important. Dad was happy. The kids were loved. And I was helping make it all work. Looking back now, I can see exactly when things started to change. It was subtle at first, but the requests became more frequent, the assumptions more bold. And I just kept saying yes, kept being the reliable one, kept putting everyone else's needs before my own. I had no idea that Victoria's 35th birthday celebration would be the moment everything finally came to a head. It was a Tuesday morning in early February when my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria while I was reviewing campaign analytics at my desk. The message was unusually formal for her. She typically sent quick, casual texts when she needed something. Hi, Maya. Hope you're having a good week at work. Could you give me a call when you have a few minutes? I have something exciting to discuss with you about my birthday plans. Thanks. The heart emoji threw me off. Victoria wasn't really the emoji type, and she definitely wasn't the type to build up suspense around phone calls. Usually, her texts were straight to the point. Can you watch kids Saturday? Or, running late, kids had dinner. This felt different, almost strategic. I called her during my lunch break, stepping outside the office building into the Arizona sunshine. Phoenix in February is perfect, warm but not scorching, the kind of weather that makes you grateful to live in the desert. Maya, Victoria's voice was brighter than usual, almost sing-song. Thanks for calling back so quickly. I know how busy you are with work. No problem. What's up with the birthday plans? Well, she paused dramatically. David and I have been talking, and we want to do something really special for my 35th. You know how I've always talked about wanting to go to Lake Tahoe? Well, we found this amazing cabin rental that's available for a whole week in March. I could hear the excitement in her voice, and honestly, I was happy for her. Victoria had been stressed lately with work picking up and the kids being in that exhausting stage where they need constant attention. A relaxing week at Lake Tahoe sounded perfect. That sounds incredible, Victoria. Lake Tahoe is supposed to be gorgeous. Are you thinking of skiing or more of a relaxation trip? A bit of both. The cabin has a hot tub, it's right on the lake, and there are ski slopes nearby. David is so excited about skiing again. You know he hasn't been since before your mom got sick. Her voice softened slightly when she mentioned Mom, which she always did. It was one of the things I actually appreciated about Victoria. She never tried to erase Mom's memory or act like she was replacing her. I'm so happy for you guys. You both deserve a break. That's actually why I'm calling, Victoria continued, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. The cabin rental is pretty expensive, especially for a full week during peak season. We were hoping the whole family could chip in to make it happen. You know, like a group gift for my birthday. I was already pulling up my banking app before she finished explaining. Victoria had always been good to Dad, and seeing him happy again after years of grief was worth any amount of money to me. Of course. How much are we talking? Well, with your dad and me, plus Melissa and her husband contributing, we figured if everyone chips in about $800, we can cover the whole week at the cabin plus some of the food and activities. $800. It was more than I'd spent on my last vacation. Actually, more than I'd spent on anything fun in months since I'd been so focused on building my savings. But this was family. This was Dad getting to ski again for the first time in years. This was Victoria finally getting the celebration she deserved. That's totally fine, I said, already transferring the money. I'll send it over today. Really? Just like that? Victoria sounded almost surprised, like she'd been prepared for pushback. Of course. Family vacations are important. Dad's going to love skiing again, and you've been working so hard lately. When are you planning to go? The third week of March. It's perfect timing because the kids will be on spring break, so we won't have to worry about school schedules. Something in the way she said, "We won't have to worry," made me pause, but I couldn't quite pinpoint why. Maybe it was the assumption that the kids would automatically be part of the vacation, or maybe it was just the way she phrased it. That's great planning. Spring break at Lake Tahoe sounds like a dream. I'm so relieved you're on board, Maya. I was worried you might think it was too much to ask, but David said you'd understand how important this is for our family. The phrase "our family" stuck with me after we hung up. Not the family, or your dad and me, but our family. It felt inclusive, like maybe Victoria was finally seeing me as a real part of the unit rather than just Dad's daughter who helped out sometimes. Over the next few weeks, Victoria would occasionally mention the trip in passing. She'd text about finding the perfect ski gear, or call Dad excitedly about restaurant reservations she'd made in the area. Each time, I felt a warm satisfaction knowing I'd helped make her dream vacation possible. I had no idea that my $800 contribution was about to become the foundation for the most manipulative plan I'd ever encountered. The family dinner was scheduled for a Sunday in late February, about 3 weeks before the Lake Tahoe trip. Victoria had insisted we all gather at Dad's house for what she called a celebration planning session. I'd been looking forward to it all week, finally getting to hear all the details about the vacation I'd helped fund. Maybe even seeing some photos of the cabin or hearing about the activities they'd planned. I arrived at Dad's house around 6 p.m., carrying a bottle of wine and genuinely excited to be part of the planning process. The familiar scent of Dad's cooking hit me as soon as I walked in. He was making his famous chili, the same recipe he'd perfected during my childhood. Some things never changed, and I was grateful for that consistency. Victoria's sister Melissa was already there with her husband Tom, and they were sitting at the kitchen island looking at something on Melissa's phone. The kids were in the living room, Ethan and Noah building an elaborate Lego castle, while Lily colored in a princess coloring book, her tongue sticking out in concentration. "Maya!" Victoria practically bounced over to me, taking the wine and giving me an unusually enthusiastic hug. Perfect timing. We were just looking at photos of the cabin online. "Come see." She led me over to where Melissa and Tom were huddled around the phone. And I had to admit, the place looked incredible. A rustic wooden cabin with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the crystal blue water of Lake Tahoe, snow-capped mountains in the background, and a deck with what looked like the most relaxing hot tub I'd ever seen. "Victoria, this is absolutely gorgeous," I said, genuinely impressed. "Dad's going to lose his mind when he sees those ski slopes." "I know, right?" Melissa chimed in. "We've been planning this for weeks. The cabin has everything: full kitchen, fireplace, game room. It's going to be the perfect week." Dad emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel and grinning wider than I'd seen in months. "Maya, did you see the pictures? I can't believe we're actually doing this. I haven't been skiing since—" He trailed off, but I knew he meant since before Mom got sick. "I'm so happy for you, Dad. You deserve this." We settled around the dinner table, and for the first hour, everything felt perfect. The chili was delicious, the conversation was light and happy, and Victoria kept showing us different photos and activities she'd researched for the area. She'd found a ski rental place, several restaurants with amazing reviews, and even a scenic gondola ride that looked breathtaking. "So," Victoria said, pushing her bowl aside and clasping her hands together with theatrical excitement, "now for the best part. I want to tell everyone exactly how the week is going to work." She pulled out her phone and started reading from what was clearly a detailed itinerary. "Monday we'll arrive and get settled, maybe explore the town a bit. Tuesday is our big ski day. David, Melissa, Tom, and I are all signed up for lessons and lift tickets. Wednesday we're doing that gondola ride and some shopping in the village. Thursday is spa day for us girls, while the guys do more skiing. Friday, we're having a big birthday dinner at this incredible lakeside restaurant I found. I listened, smiling, waiting to hear where I fit into all these plans. But as Victoria continued reading, a cold realization started creeping up my spine. She was listing activities for 4 adults, not 5, not including me. Victoria, I interrupted gently, this all sounds amazing. Where do I fit into the itinerary? The table went quiet. Victoria looked up from her phone with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise mixed with something that looked almost like guilt. Oh, she said, her voice suddenly smaller. Well, that's actually the other thing we needed to discuss. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. Melissa suddenly became very interested in her water glass. Tom looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. The thing is, Victoria continued, her words coming faster now, the cabin only has 3 bedrooms, and it's really designed for couples. Plus, with all the adult activities we have planned, the skiing lessons, the spa, the fancy dinners, it's going to be pretty, well, adult-focused. My stomach started to drop, but I still didn't fully understand what she was getting at. What are you saying exactly? Victoria exchanged a quick glance with Dad before looking back at me. We were hoping you could do us a huge favor and watch Ethan, Noah, and Lily while we're gone. You know how much they love spending time with their big sister Maya. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, processing what I'd just heard. They wanted me to babysit. For a week, while they went on the vacation I'd helped pay for. Let me get this straight, I said slowly, setting down my fork. You want me to watch the kids while you all go to Lake Tahoe? It would just be for the week, Dad said quickly, speaking up for the first time since Victoria's announcement. And you're so wonderful with them, Maya. They'd have more fun with you than they would sitting around a cabin while we're all skiing anyway. I looked around the table at these people I called family. Victoria wouldn't meet my eyes. Melissa was nodding along like this was completely reasonable. Tom looked uncomfortable, but wasn't saying anything. And Dad was looking at me with that hopeful expression he used to give me when I was little, and he needed me to be brave about something difficult. So let me understand this completely, I said, my voice eerily calm. I contributed $800 to fund this family vacation. You've been planning activities for weeks, and now you're telling me that instead of being included in the celebration, I'm expected to provide free childcare. The silence that followed was deafening. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity before Victoria finally spoke, her voice taking on that overly bright tone she used when she was trying to smooth over a difficult situation. Maya, it's not like that at all. You're being so dramatic about this. She forced a laugh that sounded hollow in the suddenly tense dining room. We just thought it would be more fun for everyone this way. The kids would be bored out of their minds at a ski resort, and you know how much they love spending time with you. I could feel my face getting hot, but I kept my voice level. Victoria, I contributed $800 to this trip. I thought I was helping fund a family vacation, not paying for the privilege of being excluded from it. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sweetheart, it's not about exclusion. It's just practical. The cabin really is small, and the kids would be miserable with all the adult activities we have planned. Then maybe, I said, looking directly at him, you should have planned some family-friendly activities, or chosen a bigger cabin, or, I don't know, actually included me in the planning process instead of just taking my money and assuming I'd be fine with whatever you decided. Melissa finally spoke up, her voice cautious. Maya, I understand you're disappointed, but think about it logically. Victoria deserves to have a relaxing birthday celebration. The kids are a lot of work, and if they came with us, none of us would get to enjoy ourselves. This way, everyone wins. Everyone wins? I repeated, incredulous. How exactly do I win in this scenario? Well, Victoria said, her tone becoming more defensive, you get to spend quality time with the kids without any distractions. They absolutely adore you, Maya. And think about how much money you'll save not having to pay for ski equipment, restaurant meals, activities. Really, we're doing you a favor. The audacity of that statement left me speechless for a moment. Tom was staring at his plate like he wished he could teleport anywhere else. The kids, thankfully, were still absorbed in their activities in the living room, oblivious to the tension radiating from the dining room. Let me see if I understand this correctly, I said, my voice getting steadier, as my anger crystallized into something clearer. You think you're doing me a favor by taking my money, excluding me from the vacation, and expecting me to provide a week of free childcare? It's not free, Dad said quickly. We'll pay you, of course. How much? The question hung in the air. Victoria and Dad exchanged glances, and I could see them doing mental calculations, probably trying to figure out the minimum amount they could offer without looking completely unreasonable. We were thinking maybe $200 for the week, Victoria said hesitantly. I almost laughed. $200 for a week of 24/7 childcare for 3 kids? Do you have any idea what professional childcare costs? But you're not a professional, Melissa interjected. You're family, and it's not like you have kids of your own to worry about or a husband waiting at home. Your schedule is pretty flexible. There it was. The assumption that because I was single and didn't have children of my own, my time was somehow less valuable, that my life was less important because it didn't fit their definition of what mattered. My schedule is flexible, I repeated. I have a full-time job, Victoria, a career that I actually care about. I can't just take a week off work on short notice to babysit. Oh, come on, Victoria said, waving her hand dismissively. You're always talking about how understanding your boss is. I'm sure you can work something out. Maybe work from home or something. So now I'm supposed to work full-time and provide childcare simultaneously? Dad leaned forward, using the gentle but firm voice he'd perfected during my teenage years. Maya, I know this isn't ideal, but family sometimes means making sacrifices for each other. You know how hard Victoria has been working, how stressed she's been. This vacation means everything to her. And what about what means everything to me, Dad? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly not having an answer ready. Victoria jumped back in, her voice taking on an edge I'd rarely heard before. Maya, I'm really disappointed in your reaction to this. When David and I got married, I thought I was gaining a daughter who would be part of our family team, someone who would help us build something beautiful together. But right now, you're acting like a spoiled child who isn't getting her way. The manipulation was so blatant, it was almost impressive. Questioning my character, my commitment to the family, my maturity, all because I had the audacity to object to being used. You want me to be part of the family team? I asked quietly. Then include me in family decisions. Include me in family vacations. Don't just include me when you need something from me. We do include you, Dad protested. You're here for every holiday, every birthday, every important moment. As the babysitter, Dad, not as a participant. The truth of that statement settled over the table like a heavy blanket. For the first time since this conversation started, nobody had an immediate comeback ready. The silence that followed my last statement was different from the others. This wasn't the awkward pause of people trying to figure out what to say next. This was the heavy quiet that comes when an uncomfortable truth has been spoken out loud and no one can deny it anymore. I looked around the table at their faces. Victoria was staring at her hands, her jaw set in that stubborn way that meant she was digging in her heels. Melissa looked uncomfortable, but wasn't going to contradict her sister. Tom was still studying his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. And Dad looked genuinely confused. like he was seeing something for the first time and didn't know what to make of it. Maya, Victoria said finally, her voice taking on a patronizing tone that made my skin crawl. I think you're being really unfair right now. We've always treated you like family. Have you? I asked quietly. Because family members get invited on family vacations. Family members get consulted about major decisions. Family members don't just get called when you need a favor. That's not true, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my text messages with Victoria from the past 6 months. Victoria, January 15th. Maya, could you possibly watch the kids Saturday? I have a client emergency. January 22nd. Hey, last minute ask, but could you take the twins overnight? David and I really need some alone time. February 3rd. Maya, I'm overwhelmed with showings this weekend. Could you help with the kids? I kept scrolling, reading date after date of requests, favors, emergencies that somehow always required my immediate availability. The pattern was so clear when laid out like this, so undeniable. When was the last time you texted me just to ask how I was doing, Victoria? When was the last time you invited me to something that didn't involve watching your children? Victoria's face flushed red. That's not fair. I'm busy. We're all busy. You're right. We are all busy. But somehow my busy life is less important than yours when you need something. A memory surfaced suddenly, sharp and clear. Last month, I'd had food poisoning. Proper, miserable, couldn't leave the bathroom food poisoning. I'd texted the family group chat to let them know I wouldn't make it to Sunday dinner. Dad had called to check on me, brought me soup and medicine. But Victoria? Victoria had texted back, asking if I'd be feeling better by Saturday because she had a showing and needed someone to watch Lily. You know what really hurts? I continued, the words flowing out of me now like water through a broken dam. I actually defended you to my friend Jess. She kept telling me you were taking advantage of me. And I kept saying, no, that's just what families do. We help each other out. But we don't help each other out, do we? I help you out. Constantly. And in return, I get what exactly? You get to be part of this family, Victoria snapped, her patience finally cracking. You get to have relationships with Ethan, Noah, and Lily. You get to see your father happy again. Some people would be grateful for that. There it was. The real truth underneath all the manipulation. I was supposed to be grateful. Grateful for the privilege of being used. Grateful for being included just enough to be useful, but not enough to matter. I thought about all the Saturday nights I'd spent babysitting instead of going out with friends. All the Sunday mornings I'd gotten up early to watch the kids so Victoria and Dad could sleep in. All the vacation days I'd used for their emergencies, instead of taking trips I actually wanted to take. You're right, I said, standing up from the table. Some people would be grateful for that. But I'm not some people. I'm your stepdaughter. I'm Dad's daughter. And I deserve better than being treated like hired help who works for free. Maya, sit down, Dad said, his voice carrying that parental authority he rarely used anymore. We're not done talking about this. Actually, we are. I picked up my purse from the counter where I'd left it when I arrived full of excitement about vacation planning. How naive that seemed now. I'm not watching the kids during your vacation. Find actual childcare or change your plans. You can't be serious, Victoria said, standing up as well. Maya, if you don't do this, you'll ruin everything. The whole trip will be canceled. My birthday will be ruined. Is that really what you want? The manipulation was so transparent now that I almost wanted to laugh. Make it my fault. Make me the villain for not going along with their unreasonable expectations. Victoria, if your entire vacation plan depends on me providing free labor, then maybe you didn't plan it very well. I headed toward the front door, my heart pounding, but my head clearer than it had been in months. Behind me, I could hear urgent whispered conversations starting up, Victoria's voice rising in what sounded like panic. As I reached for the doorknob, Dad's voice stopped me. Maya, wait. Let's talk about this rationally. I turned back to look at him, this man I'd loved and respected my entire life, and felt something fundamental shift between us. Dad, I am being rational. For the first time in 3 years, I'm being completely rational. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying the dinner conversation, analyzing every word, every expression, looking for some sign that I'd misunderstood or overreacted. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the most blatant example of a pattern that had been building for 3 years. By morning, something had crystallized in my mind. I wasn't just going to refuse to babysit. I was going to do something for myself instead. I called in sick to work, which wasn't entirely a lie since I felt emotionally drained, and spent the morning researching. If Victoria could plan her dream vacation, then so could I. And I had a pretty good idea of exactly what my dream vacation looked like. New York City had been on my bucket list since college. Broadway shows, world-class museums, incredible restaurants, the energy of the city that never sleeps. I'd always told myself I'd go someday, when work calmed down, when I had more money saved, when the timing was perfect. Well, maybe the timing was finally perfect. I found a boutique hotel in Manhattan with availability for the exact same week as the Lake Tahoe trip. It was more expensive than I'd normally spend on accommodation, but I had money in my vacation fund, money I'd been saving for months while constantly canceling my own plans to help with family emergencies. The Broadway show tickets were trickier. Hamilton had a few single seats available, and I managed to snag a ticket for the Wednesday matinee. I also booked tickets for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the 9/11 Memorial, and a food tour through Little Italy. Each booking felt like a small act of rebellion, a declaration that my interests and desires mattered too. But the best part? I booked everything for the exact dates of Victoria's Lake Tahoe trip. My phone started ringing around noon. Victoria's name flashed across the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad called. Then Melissa. I ignored them all and kept planning my trip. The voicemails started stacking up. Maya, it's Victoria. I think we got off on the wrong foot last night. Call me back so we can work this out. Sweetheart, it's Dad. Your stepmom is pretty upset. Can we please talk about this like adults? Maya, it's Melissa. I know Victoria can be intense sometimes, but she really does care about you. This vacation means so much to her. Each message followed the same pattern, acknowledging that maybe they could have handled things better, but ultimately asking me to be the bigger person and just go along with their plan. Not one of them apologized for trying to use me. Not one of them acknowledged that their expectations had been completely unreasonable. That evening, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Dad standing on my doorstep, holding a bouquet of flowers. My favorite sunflowers that he used to bring me when I was upset as a kid. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Maya, we need to talk, he said, offering me the flowers. About what, Dad? About this situation with the vacation. I know Victoria could have approached it better, but you have to understand how much stress she's under. The real estate market is brutal right now. The kids are exhausting, and she just needs this break. I took the flowers but stayed in the doorway. And what about the break I need, Dad? What do you mean? When was the last time you asked me how I'm doing? Really asked. Not just the polite, how's work question at family dinners. When was the last time you checked if I was stressed or exhausted or needed a break? Dad looked genuinely puzzled, like this was a completely foreign concept. But you seem to have everything together, Maya. Your job is going great. You have your own apartment. You're independent. I'm independent because I have to be, Dad. because everyone in this family takes and assumes I'll always say yes. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me the last time Victoria invited me to something that didn't involve watching her children. Tell me the last time someone in this family considered what I might want before making plans. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched between us. I thought so, I said quietly. Maya, please, just think about this. If you don't watch the kids, the whole trip will have to be canceled. Victoria's birthday will be ruined. Is that really what you want? There it was again, making it my responsibility to fix their poor planning, my fault if their unreasonable expectations weren't met. Dad, I've thought about it plenty, and I've made my decision. I'm not watching the kids that week. But what are you going to do instead? Sit at home and sulk? I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd felt since that disastrous dinner. Actually, I'm going to New York City. I leave the same day you leave for Lake Tahoe. The expression on Dad's face was priceless. Confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been the first glimmer of understanding that I was serious about putting myself first for once. Maya, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Dad, and I'm going to have the time of my life. The week in New York was everything I'd dreamed it would be and more. I walked through Central Park in the crisp March air, spent hours getting lost in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and cried actual tears during Hamilton. I ate amazing food, took a million photos, and for the first time in years, did exactly what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I kept my phone on airplane mode for most of the trip. Whatever chaos was unfolding back in Phoenix could wait. This week was mine. But on my last day, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on while sitting in a cafe in Soho, sipping the best cappuccino I'd ever tasted. The screen immediately lit up with notifications, missed calls, voicemails, and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. The first few were from the morning they were supposed to leave for Lake Tahoe. Victoria. Maya, we're at your apartment. Where are you? The kids are asking for you. Dad. Sweetheart, your car isn't here. Where did you go? We need to talk. Melissa. Maya. Victoria's having a complete meltdown. Please just come home. Then came the angry ones, sent throughout the week as reality set in. Victoria. I can't believe you would do this to us. We had to cancel the entire trip. My birthday is ruined because of your selfishness. Dad. Maya. I'm disappointed in you. This isn't the daughter I raised. Family comes first. Victoria. Do you have any idea what it was like explaining to Ethan, Noah, and Lily why their big sister Maya abandoned them? They were crying. But the last message, sent just that morning, was different. It was from Dad, and it was longer than his usual texts. Maya, I've had a lot of time to think this week. Victoria and I tried to find last-minute childcare but couldn't afford anything decent on short notice. We ended up staying home, and honestly, it wasn't the relaxing week Victoria needed. She's been furious all week, mostly at you, but some of it at me too. Last night she said something about how I raised a selfish daughter who doesn't understand family loyalty. I was about to agree with her when I realized something. In all her anger about you ruining her birthday, she never once asked where you were or if you were okay. She never wondered if you might be hurt or in trouble. She was just angry that you weren't available to solve her problem. That bothered me more than I expected. I think maybe we need to talk when you get back. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe. I read that message 3 times, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, sadness, hope, and a lingering hurt that it had taken this situation for Dad to see what I'd been trying to tell him. The flight home gave me time to prepare for whatever confrontation was waiting. I expected Victoria to be furious. I expected guilt trips and accusations. What I didn't expect was the text I received as my plane was landing. Victoria, we need to talk. Come to the house tonight. It wasn't a request. I went, mostly because I wanted to see this through to the end. Dad opened the door before I could knock, and for the first time in days, he looked genuinely relieved to see me. Maya, thank God. We were starting to worry something had happened to you. Victoria appeared behind him, her face set in hard lines. Well, the prodigal daughter returns. Have a nice vacation? Actually, yes. I had a wonderful time in New York. Her face flushed red. New York? You went to New York while we were stuck here dealing with the mess you created. I didn't create any mess, Victoria. I simply chose not to clean up yours. Dad gestured for us to sit down in the living room. The kids were nowhere to be seen. Probably at Melissa's house, away from the adult drama. Maya, Victoria said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Do you have any idea what you've put us through? The money we lost on the cabin reservation, the disappointment, the stress? About as much stress as I've been dealing with for 3 years, I replied calmly. That's different, and you know it. How is it different? Victoria threw her hands up in exasperation. Because we're family. Family helps each other. You're right. Family does help each other. But family also respects each other, includes each other, and values each other. When was the last time you helped me with anything, Victoria? When was the last time you considered what I might need or want? Dad cleared his throat. Maya, I've been thinking about what you said last week, about feeling like hired help. Victoria shot him a sharp look, but he continued. Maybe we have been taking advantage of your good nature. Maybe we got so used to you always saying yes that we stopped considering whether we should be asking in the first place. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from him, and honestly, it was more than I'd expected. Dad, I love this family. I love Ethan, Noah, and Lily. But I can't keep being the person everyone expects to sacrifice everything for everyone else's convenience. So what happens now? Victoria asked, her voice smaller than before. Now we figure out how to be a real family, one where everyone's needs matter. The conversation that night didn't solve everything. 3 years of built-up resentment and misunderstanding don't disappear in a single evening. But it was a start. Dad seemed genuinely willing to examine how our family dynamics had evolved, while Victoria was still Victoria. She apologized, but it felt more like she was sorry she got caught than sorry for her behavior. I guess I just got so used to you being available, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. You're so capable, Maya. So independent. I suppose I started taking that for granted. It wasn't the heartfelt acknowledgement I might have hoped for, but it was something. More importantly, Dad was listening in a way he hadn't before. What do you need from us going forward? He asked. How do we do better? I'd spent the flight home thinking about exactly that question. First, no more assumptions. If you want me to babysit, ask me at least a week in advance unless it's a genuine emergency. And I mean real emergency. Hospital visits, not spa appointments or last-minute date nights. Victoria's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Second, if you're planning family events or vacations, include me in the actual planning. Don't just ask for money or assume I'll be available for whatever you decide. That's fair, Dad said immediately. And third, I continued, looking directly at Victoria, stop treating my life like it's less important because I don't have kids or a husband. My time has value. My career matters. My relationships and interests matter. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I never meant to make you feel like your life didn't matter. Maybe not intentionally, but impact matters more than intent. The weeks that followed were interesting. Victoria clearly struggled with the new boundaries. She'd start to text me about watching the kids, then delete the message and call an actual babysitter instead. A few times she slipped back into old patterns, but Dad started calling her out on it, which was progress. "Victoria, Maya has plans Saturday night," I heard him say during one phone call. "We'll figure something else out." The real test came about a month later, when Victoria's sister Melissa was planning a surprise birthday party for her husband Tom. The old Victoria would have assumed I'd drop everything to help with decorations and watch all the kids during the party. Instead, she actually called and asked, "Maya, I know this is short notice, but would you be available to help with Tom's surprise party next weekend? Melissa could really use an extra pair of hands, and the kids always behave better when you're around." The old Maya would have automatically said yes, even though I had tickets to a concert that Saturday night with my friend Jess, tickets I'd bought months in advance. "I'm sorry, Victoria, but I already have plans that night. I could help with setup earlier in the day if that would be useful, but I won't be available during the actual party." There was a pause. I could practically hear her internal struggle between her old expectations and our new agreement. "Okay," she said finally. That's fine. I'll ask if Melissa can hire someone for the evening." It was such a small thing, but it felt like a victory. The kids adjusted better than the adults did, honestly. Ethan, Noah, and Lily didn't seem fazed by the fact that Aunt Maya wasn't always available at a moment's notice. When I did spend time with them now, it felt different, more intentional, more enjoyable for everyone, because I'd chosen to be there rather than been guilted into it. "Maya, you seem happier lately," Ethan observed one afternoon while we were building a fort in the backyard. "Kids are remarkably perceptive." "I am happier," I told him honestly. "Good. Dad says happy people make better fort builders." 6 months later, Victoria planned another vacation, this time a long weekend in Sedona for Dad's birthday. And this time, she included me from the beginning. "We're thinking about renting a house with enough room for everyone," she said during a family dinner. "There are some great hiking trails, and I found this spa that does group packages. What do you think, Maya? Would you be interested?" I was interested. More than that, I was touched that she'd thought to ask me as a participant rather than as the designated childcare provider. "That sounds really nice," I said. "Send me the details and I'll check my calendar." It wasn't perfect. Victoria still had moments where she forgot that I had a life outside of helping her family, and Dad sometimes still defaulted to old assumptions. But we were learning. Slowly, sometimes awkwardly, but genuinely. The most important change wasn't in them, though. It was in me. I'd learned to value myself enough to demand that others value me, too. I'd learned that being helpful and being a doormat are two very different things. And I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their worst behaviors. My friend Jess was right. I am happier now. Not because I love my family any less, but because I finally love myself enough to insist on being treated with respect. And that, I've discovered, makes all the difference.